With the recent launch of the Olympus TG1 Tough camera, we've brought it here to Nîmes Whitewater Centre to pit it against its rivals, the Nikon AW100, the Pentax WG2 GPS and the Canon Powershot D20. The Nikon Coolpix AW100 has a 15.9 megapixel sensor. It's got a 5x optical zoom, a 10-metre waterproof depth, and it's also shockproof from 1.5 metres. So that's it, I'm in my wetsuit, my safety's on, so I guess it's time to get started in my tube. And first up, it's the Nikon. The Nikon AW100 is really quite comfortable to hold, especially given that the lens is in that top left-hand corner, so you can really get your hand around the camera. And the rocker switch is really easy to use for the zoom, so when you're zooming in and out it makes it quite simple, you don't have to move your finger. It's also really handy that the shutter release button is quite round and prominent, so you can easily press it without having to look. The focus also seems to lock onto things quite quickly, which is really handy when you're on the move. Didn't get too many blurred shots with this one, but we'll have to see how it does overall at the end. This Nikon takes quite bright looking pictures. It's a sunny day, but you can see the blue's really nice in the sky. The trees are also quite sharp in the background, which wasn't the case on all of the cameras that we looked at. The Canon Powershot D20 has a 12.1 megapixel resolution. It's got a 5x optical zoom and it's waterproof up to a depth of 10 metres. It's also shockproof from a height of 1.5 metres. Again, like the Nikon, you've got the lens in the top left-hand corner, so you can use most of the body of the camera to really get a good grip. Strange thing with this one is that if you're sitting around in between times, I noticed it was turning itself off, and you kind of have to press the power button a couple of times to bring it back to life, which means you could miss that critical moment if you're kind of leaving it sitting there, pointing at something, waiting for the action to happen. But overall, the pictures look quite bright. Again, like the Nikon, it's creating a nice look in the colours, and also in the background, and the textures in the trees are looking quite good, even though you're focused on things that are quite close to you in the spray and my feet. The Pentax Optio WG2 GPS has a 15.9 megapixel sensor. It's got a 5x optical zoom, it's waterproof down to a depth of 12 metres and shockproof from a height of 1.5 metres. Pentax has a really different feel to it when you're holding it. It's much kind of longer and wider, so it feels a bit stranger in the hand, but it's actually still quite easy to hold, and you can push against the lens with your finger so it doesn't overlap when you're trying to take a picture. One of the more noticeable things about this is the screen was a little bit more difficult to see than the previous two that we looked at, so it was a bit harder to line up the shots. I also got a few more blurry shots from this one, so it didn't seem to lock onto stuff quite as quickly, but that might have just depended on what I was pointing it at the time. Looking at the pictures, they're ever so slightly darker than the Nikon and the Canon. The blue sky just isn't quite as bright, and the contrast in the trees is lacking. The Olympus Tough TG1 has a 12 megapixel sensor. It's got a 4x optical zoom, the least of the models here. It's also waterproof to a depth of 12 metres and shockproof from a height of 2 metres. The Olympus is the only one with a program dial, and that's really great when you're just trying to flick between scenes. You don't have to dig around in menus too much. Although the lens was in the centre, you had that nice grip at the front to hold on to, so it was really easy to use, and the screen was much brighter noticeably after using the Pentax, making it much easier to see and to line up the shots. It seemed to react quite quickly, take some pretty decent shots, but it wasn't quite as bright looking in kind of looking at the sky and the trees as the Canon and the Nikon, but I preferred the picture quality to the Pentax. All the models here are freeze-proof down to a temperature of -10 degrees C. They all have built-in GPS and can shoot video at 1080p. Now, any fool can float downstream in a tyre, but to help me with the video capabilities of these cameras, I've enlisted the help of Chris Chapman, the kayak instructor here at NEN, just to show how good the video is. As you can see from the video, they all capture it quite well, considering they're compact cameras, and the image stabilisation seems to be working pretty well too. They're not too juddery, even though they were really getting chucked around. So they came out pretty well, and you can see that a few minor differences maybe in colour and things, but generally pretty good video. So having taken these 4 cameras for a fairly extreme donut ride, there's certainly things that I've noticed that are better for this kind of setting. First up, if we look at this Canon, I really like the whole having the lens in this top corner, because it meant I'd had a lot of space to hold on to the camera. One thing I did notice though was with this button, these buttons here, the zoom, because they're as separate buttons, they're not quite as easy to use as this kind of rocker switch when you're just trying to do things really quickly. And also the on-off button and the shutter release button are very, very similar. So when I'm underwater, it's a little bit hard to tell which one I'm pressing. That said, the screen's really good on this Canon, and it seemed to take really quick shots, which was quite impressive. Moving on to the Nikon, again, it's got the same arrangement with the lens in the top corner, plenty of room to hold. Although I did find it a bit I was wary of the fact that I had this kind of video button very close to my fingers when using the rocker switch here. It was also quite easy to see the screen, so that suited quite well, and it's fairly easy to hold. Having this neck strap really helped. Onto the Pentax. Okay, so the lens is in the middle with this one, but you can at least feel this ring here. Now, it's quite comfy to hold, but I had real trouble seeing the screen. It's a very bright day today, and I did have to tilt it quite a bit. It's also a little bit fiddly on some of the buttons, trying to get through the mode settings. They're a little bit kind of more in-depth. If you want to just be able to take quick video, it's much easier to do when you've got a dedicated video button like on this Canon. Now onto the Olympus. It's the one I tried straight after the Pentax, and the difference in the screen was really noticeable. It's colourful, it's much easier to see in this light. Obviously, with any camera, when you're reliant on the monitor, it's much easier if you've got a viewfinder, but I got away with this camera. And actually, although the lens is in the centre, this grip here became very useful to push against, and the buttons here are quite flat. This dial here, you can get quite a bit of pressure against it. Obviously, it's not going to press anything, it's not going to activate anything. That said, I did manage to knock the info button a couple of times and bring things up. But I mean, the shots seem fairly quick, and I think you're going to be better off in this kind of situation if you're working in a continuous shooting mode. So this new Olympus Tough definitely held its own amongst the others. If I had to pick a favourite, I'd pick one of two. Personally, I'd say either the Olympus Tough or the Nikon. Easier to see the screens, just generally the buttons were so much more obvious. There was no mistaking this round button here for the on-off button there, and the toggle, the rocker dial here for the zoom is just so much easier to use. So they would be my choices if you're going to be going on a rough water adventure.